Moving right along to another Representative Thompson bill, we have House Bill 1103. I will thank you, Representative Thompson. I will move your bill. House Bill 1103 be recommended to be placed on the general register. Your bill is now before us, but I believe you do have an author's amendment, the A2 amendment. I will go ahead and move the A2 amendment. This is an amendment that clarifies that video and audio may be redacted as required by the law, but cannot be edited. So it's similar to the language that's currently in the Public Safety Omnibus Bill. So I will move that A2 amendment. Representative Thompson, would you like to add anything regarding the A2 amendment?
No, Chair.
All right. We'll move to a voice vote. All those in favor of A2 amendment, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, the A2 amendment is adopted. We now have the bill before us as amended. Representative Thompson, please tell us about your bill.
Well, House File 1103 is duties imposed on peace officers and law enforcement agencies regarding video and audio of deadly use of force and civil rights, civil remedy provided. It allows families access within 48 hours to view this body-worn camera footage in police critical incidents. It requires, as amended, video be available for copying after 90 days by descendants of next of kin. Families of people killed by police wait several months to up to a year now or more before they can view this footage that would allow them to know how their loved ones died. A lot of times there's something to hide in these, I call them snuff videos, is what I call them, because that's what we're seeing. These police-involved murders. The purpose of 1104 is to restore the balance. 1103. I'm sorry, is to restore the balance in Minnesota's data practices, Government Data Practices Act, by making this footage available to families of the people killed by police officers. And with that, Chair, I have Jonathan McCullum also to.
All right, thank you, Representative Thompson. We do have a couple testifiers. Mr. McClellan, if you could reintroduce yourself for the record and then go ahead with your testimony. Keeping in mind, we've got about 40 minutes left in committee today, and we've got one other bill to discuss. So, Mr. McClellan.
Promise I'll be less than 5 minutes. Hello, my name is Jonathan McClellan. I'm the president of the Minnesota Justice Coalition and law student at the University of St. Thomas. I would like to thank this committee for giving me an opportunity to share with you today. I would also like to thank Representative Thompson for carrying this important piece of legislation. The common thread that you hear throughout all the families' cases who lost loved ones to police violence is that information is kept by law enforcement, and the information sought often stalls out potential cases, and the family is left to suffer not knowing what truly happened to their loved one. You should not have to wait 10 months or 11 years to know what happened when your loved one is killed. One case in particular which inspired this legislation is the case of Kobe Heisler. Kobe Heisler was a young autistic boy who was killed in Brooklyn Center in his grandparents' home by law enforcement on August 31st, 2019, following a mental health incident. This is the same city where Dante Wright was killed. While meeting with many other families who lost loved ones at the hands of law enforcement, Kobe's mother, Amity, was notified that she would be allowed to see the footage from her son's death. This happened to be 1 week after the death of George Floyd. In early June 2020, almost 10 months after the death of Kobe, Amity was told that the only people that could see the law enforcement videos were her family, and then that changed the day of the scheduled viewing. To add to her pain and grief of losing her son, Amity was overcome with grief to the point where she was unable to stand. She was not allowed a chance to properly grieve for her son because she was kept in the dark on what really happened. There are many similar cases when it comes to families requesting information. These families are put on a yo-yo trying to figure out what happened to their loved one, and oftentimes this goes on for years. In another case, we are still receiving contradictory information after 11 years of being told that it didn't exist. We were able to find a video. In a recent case out of Minneapolis, the police released one video to justify the killing of a man named Dalat Eid, allowing that narrative to simmer in the community while holding on to all the cards rebuffing the family's pleas for transparency and access to all the video while the family is still grieving. As a state, we can do better. To prove this, after the tragic killing of Dante Wright, the police released the video within 24 hours and allowed the family to view it in less than 20. On Saturday, March 20th, Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman told a working group of 16, including Attorney General Keith Ellison and Minnesota Commissioner of Public Safety John Harrington, regarding any police-involved deadly force encounters, that any video related to the death of a citizen should be made public as soon as possible, but in all cases within 45 days of the incident. When law enforcement agencies withhold video evidence of police behavior, the other details concerning the deceased are usually released shortly after the incident. The decedent's prior criminal record, whether or not the person possessed drugs, the blood test results, and the coroner's report are made available to the media. The priority of the families gets lost in this process, and that needs to change. Families should be number one. Oftentimes, when the video and/or audio is released by law enforcement, it will be selective in spinning a narrative in the media that benefits one side. Oftentimes, these media dumps are misleading and cast a negative shadow on the person who was killed, forcing the families to fight an uphill battle to clear their loved one's name while trying to grieve and seek justice. As part of his earlier statement, Mike Freeman said, "We share these remarks with a profound commitment to deal fairly, transparently, and professionally as we can in each case. We assign our most experienced people and allocate all the resources necessary to reach justice. These families need to be allowed access to this information to manage their trauma and pursue justice in whatever form it may come. This club's membership is unsolicited and paid in tears and sometimes in blood. It is important to ensure that transparency and trust is the bedrock and/or foundation of our government institutions, and any opportunity we have to improve, we should. This bill will help advance those very principles that are prerequisite for transparency and accountability to the families and communities in which they live." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Next on the list, I have Michelle Gross. Please reintroduce yourself for the record and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, and I'll keep my comments very short. My name is Michelle Gross, and thank you, Chair Becker-Finn and members for allowing me to testify again. And again, I'm the president of Communities United Against Police Brutality. I'm not going to reiterate the things that Jonathan already talked about. I do want to mention one thing, however. Under Minnesota Statute 13.82 Subdivision 2, already several data elements are designated as, quote, public at all times in the originating agencies, in any kinds of police critical incidents, and frankly, in any arrestable incident. However, under Minnesota Statute 13.825, body-worn camera footage has been treated as a carve-out. The purpose of House File 1103 is to restore balance by making this footage available to the families, I want to emphasize that, of people killed by police. While law enforcement has tried to conflate those families with the general public, they have a distinctly different interests, particularly an interest in knowing what happened to their family members at the hands of police. I want to quickly read a short passage in an order that we recently received in a lawsuit in which Minneapolis had denied us timely access to the names of officers who had shot a community member to death. And it's a quick little passage, but I think it absolutely applies to this circumstance. The court notes for the record that these cases, officer-involved shootings, the reasons for the public to have immediate access to specific information, such as the names of the officers, is compelling. Our common humanity tells us that we owe at least this much to the surviving family members. In her affidavit, Michelle Gross, president of CUAPB, explains that one media strategy often used by law enforcement agencies in the immediate aftermath of officer-involved killings is to vilify the victim. She explains that to be on a level playing field with such agencies, the families of those killed and the public have to have immediate access to critical information about the shooting. The court agrees. The court is persuaded that the families of the dead and maimed are entitled to immediately know the names of those responsible. And again, that's related to the names of officers involved in the shooting, but I think the very same rationale applies to the video footage of those killings. These words by Judge Bridget Sullivan are important because they recognize the humanity of the families and their need to know what happened to their loved ones. I urge passage of this statute, or rather this bill, so that we can ensure that the families of loved ones who are impacted by police deadly force incidents have at least a way to know in a timely manner what has happened to their loved ones. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Last on the list, I have Theodore Rose. Please go ahead with your testimony.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is Theodore Rose again with SEMA. We believe that the key thing here is that Minnesotans deserve to know, see, and hear the truth. So SEMA supports this bill because it will empower families in their struggle for truth and justice and accountability after a deadly force or a deadly use of force incident involving their loved ones. That's the key struggle going on in the community, as we've been saying throughout this session. And so we urge the committee to empower families by requiring the release of the recordings within 2 days. I want to thank the chair again for the opportunity to speak, and I thank Representative Thompson for authoring this bill. Thank you.
Fires. Thank you for your
Madam Chair, I think
testimony.
you're
We
on
do not
mute.
have. No, I think I'm good now. Thank you for your testimony. We don't have anyone else on the list. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first to Mr. Rose, I'm not sure what CMA stands for. Could he tell? It just says SEMA, and I'm like, what's SEMA?
It is
Yeah.
the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think he introduced himself that way with the first bill, but yeah, good to ask that question if you're not sure.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Thompson, I don't know if you know this or not, but I worked extensively on the body camera laws that we have in place right now, and I've had conversations with Ms. Gross. I've had conversations with the NAACP. I've had these people in my office. I've talked to them because we worked hard for a couple of years to try to get the right policy on body cams and to make it balanced and fair. And believe it or not, I didn't actually we were in the majority, and I did not get my way necessarily on the policy. But we felt that it was important to have the right balance. And so there are many stakeholders involved with that. And there's never a problem coming back and looking at a law years later to see how it's working out. I never have a problem doing that. I do believe that the families in most cases are able to see these videos, and I think the body camera video or the body camera laws were passed in 2016. And I had a conversation with my own sheriff last night and said, would there be a way if we added to statute that that a law enforcement agency could share with the family within a certain amount of time the video of what happened to their loved one, and maybe put some guardrails around that to say that as long as it didn't interfere with an investigation or something to that effect. And so he said, absolutely, I think that there's a conversation to be had there. And I think that most law enforcement agencies, and I know that one of your testifiers said that that's not always the case, but many law enforcement agencies are already doing that. They understand the importance of the family being able to see, what happened. And the other parts of the bill, I mean, I don't think anybody argues with the fact that those videos should not be tampered with. They should not be edited in any way except for to redact images of people that you can't find them to get their permission to have their images viewed. So my question, I guess, to the bill's author, is that anything that appeals to you as sort of something to work on going forward to get the right balance in a bill like this?
Representative Thompson.
I think, thank you, Chair and Representative I think there's some of these bills that we work on, especially when it has to do with law enforcement. Some of them are well-intended bills, right? And some of them are well-intended, but then what happens is a well-intended bill, a well-intended statute, a well-intended House file turns around and it harms a certain community. Well-intended, it harms, and by no means am I interested in doing any more than what we have before you right now. I guess the short answer is no.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm really sorry to hear that, because I feel like this is something that is important for the family members to be able to see what happened. But at the same time, I don't want to compromise an investigation or compromise, I take even the incidents with the court case that's going on right now regarding the death of George Floyd, and how it was very difficult to find a jury that could pass muster because there was so much publicity around it. And my fear is, especially with the language where you want to release the video to the family, a copy of it, my fear there is that it's going to take any possible jury or potentially taint any possible jury selection, because the video would probably widely be put out to the general public, and therefore I don't know how you would ever find an objective jury. So I don't want to interfere with due process. I don't want someone, I don't want to compromise in any way the justice system from having a fair hearing, having a fair trial in these cases. And I fear that with parts of this bill, that's what would happen. And I believe that there's a way forward with this bill to get you what you're wanting. But not everything in this bill is something that I think is in the best interest of even the victims, the potential, any victims that this might happen to. And so, because I don't want somebody that would actually be guilty to get off because we couldn't find the right jury, because the jury pool was tainted because a video was out there. So, I think that this could be worked on in good faith by all participants. But if you're not willing to do that, Representative Thompson, I'm sorry to hear that, because I think there is room for improvement on the existing law surrounding body worn cameras. And I'll leave it at that, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you, Representative Scott. Not seeing any other questions. Any closing comments, Representative Thompson?
I wanted to just ask Representative Scott a question, if I could.
You can, Representative Thompson, but I'll just remind you, we got one more bill going today, and I'm not sure if she's open to taking a question, but you can certainly ask.
Representative Scott, have you ever had anyone that you know killed by law enforcement?
Representative Scott.
No, I have not.
You couldn't imagine the pain that families and friends and loved ones feel when their family member is no longer, somebody won't be able to enjoy the 4th of July this year, and to withhold evidence to protect a law enforcement officer, to edit video, to draw a narrative that police officers are above the law, is what we're trying to prevent from happening here. Nobody wants to make law enforcement's job hard, but at the same time, we don't want to make it easy for law enforcement to get away with murder. And that's what we're seeing happen here in this state. The entire United States of America is watching the state of Minnesota right now. I want us to take bold steps in making sure that we put policy in place to hold these bad seeds accountable for when they create this these incidences are making law enforcement hard, not policy to prevent these type of incidents from happening. These incidents that keep happening, you know, there's a hate for just the uniform, and some of these officers put on their uniform to make a difference in their community, and they're being hated also. And so, you know, bad policing makes good police officers look very bad. And so I want to make sure that we do everything that we can possibly do here in this legislative body to create an atmosphere where there's no room for bad policing, and then the bad apples will fall suit and leave, i.e. what we just saw in Minneapolis. And then the last thing I would just say, Chair, is if you would allow Michelle Gross just an opportunity to elaborate just a little bit more on what I'm saying, please, and then I'm done.
All right, Ms. Gross, I'll give you just a couple minutes, and then we do need to move to the vote.
I understand. Thank you very much. Representative Scott, it was my pleasure to work with you on our prior efforts to reach a balance with the body camera footage, and it was sad to me that we weren't able to actually achieve that balance. What this bill does is simply give families access to view the footage, and they could do that at a police station, I have worked with a number of families who've done that and that sort of thing. But I've also equally worked with a number of families who literally had no access to see what happened to their family member for over a year. This is excruciating for these families. And I think this bill draws the exact balance that you're looking for by allowing the families to view that footage, perhaps again in a police station or other appropriate setting. They're not being given a copy of that footage or anything. They're simply being allowed to see it for themselves. And it's not being shared then again with the general public. It's specific to the rights of families, and it recognizes their rights and creates the balance that I think we would both agree is necessary. So I thank you for allowing me to reflect that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Gross. Always happy to have someone correct the record. Representative Scott, and then we are going to move to the vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to correct the record here, this bill does allow for the family members to have a copy eventually after a certain amount of days. And so that's a problematic part of this bill. I'll leave it at that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Scott. With that, I will renew my motion that House File 1103 as amended be moved to the General Register. The clerk will take the roll.
Becker Finn.
Aye.
Representative Moeller.
Aye.
Representative Scott.
No.
Representative Priest.
Aye.
Representative Frazier.
Aye.
Representative Grossell.
No.
Representative Hur.
Aye.
Representative Hollins.
Aye.
Representative Johnson.
No.
Representative Liebling.
Aye.
Representative Long. Representative Long. Representative Mortensen.
Aye.
Representative Novotny.
No.
Representative Farr.
No.
Representative Robbins.
No.
Representative Fang.
Aye.
Representative Zhang.
Aye.
And Representative Long. Perfect. There are 10 ayes and 6 nays.
Right, with 10 ayes and 6 nays, the motion prevails. House File 1103 as amended is recommended to be placed on the General Register.